Good morning and welcome. You are tuned in and listening to Sharona Unfiltered. Thanks for tuning in. It's going to be a great show today. I'm really excited. I have a special co-host, Jennifer Eakins, is back with me, helping me co-host today. And then we're going to talk some fantasy football with Allie Fontana. So stay tuned in for that. Allie is a great fantasy football person. If you're not following her on Twitter, you definitely need to get with the program and do that. But we're going to start, as we usually do, with some hot topics, some things that are popping out there around on the interwebs. But first, I want to bring in my co-host, Jennifer. Before I bring Jennifer in, I have to hit her with some bumper music.
Montag, lieben, Glauben, Globen.
All right. I got something to say. Yeah. It's better to burn out. Yeah. Than fade away. All right. Going down a five.
All right. Jennifer, how you doing?
I'm awesome, and it's so funny that you just played that song because that's like a huge part of my like past. Like I had that was one of the first cassettes that I ever had.
Oh yeah, I love Def
Absolutely.
Leppard. I think I had a Def Leppard cassette as well. You know what? I still have some of my old cassette tapes. I'm gonna have to get them out. I had Def Leppard, Motley Crue.
Yeah, my very
Crocus,
first
Season.
cassette I ever owned was Van Halen, and it's like every time I hear
yeah?
anything off that, it just takes me right back to I think it was like 7th or 8th grade or something, which is actually, yeah, I'm old. But anyway, I remember that, and then I had that Def Leppard. So every time I hear just even that beginning part, it makes me happy.
Yeah. Listen, I'm a metalhead. I love metal. I like all kinds of music. I almost hooked us up with some Miranda Lambert this morning, but I couldn't find anything that fit my mood. Yeah, I couldn't find anything that fit my mood. I thought that was a good one. I've got some great bumper music
I like
for
it.
Allie as well. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get started. Just briefly want to talk about this Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota skipping the NFL draft thing. Jameis Winston, it was originally reported that he wasn't going to attend, that the National Football League had approached him and suggested to him that he might not want to attend, which I thought was complete and utter bullshit when I first saw it. Not that he might not attend, but that the league would actually consider that, because it doesn't do the league any good for the two premier players, really, not to.
Yeah, I don't
draft.
know. I don't buy that they asked him that. I mean, I read, of course, that it was something
yeah.
about his grandmother or something. At least that's what they're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
She can't fly
Yeah, and
or
then that
something.
was the second. Yeah, and then that's the second story that came out, that he's going to be with his grandmother, which is admirable. She can't travel.
Right, but I also
she,
read that he may still be there. He's still he's not guaranteed. I think Mariota is definitely not coming, but I believe Winston may be. At least that's what I read this morning. I don't know.
As with most things, always subject to change, and always subject to the general overall public perception and response to what I call plant stories. And these are plant stories. There's no question in my mind. Yeah, that these are plant stories. And here's the thing. I don't know. I didn't look into why Marcus Mariota. I think he said he wanted to be with his family as well. Families are welcome in Chicago. Hey, you know what? Chicago is a really great place. It's a wonderful, nice city. I think that it would be a mistake for these guys, and I respect that. If in fact Jameis Winston does want to spend that day with his grandmother, it's really hard to knock that. But let me say this too: this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to attend the NFL draft. I know it's not in New York City. It's going to be in Chicago. But Chicago is a great city in its own right. And this, again, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, to hear your name called, to walk across that stage. Now, I understand that there might be some hecklers and that there might be, some unpleasant things to to have to deal with there. If that, listen, man up. Ice up, son. It's not going to get easier when you get into the National Football League. If you think that you're not going to experience heckling and whatever, Jameis Winston in an NFL stadium, I've got some harsh reality. But,
that's going to happen for a while. I mean, everything that he's, everything that's happened, and as they say, that his reputation, will precede him, and it'll happen. I mean, shoot, Manti Te'o is still getting shit now. You know what I mean? For something that wasn't even, it wasn't even something that was illegal or something. You know what I mean? Like he's, and he's still taking, So for sure, I think it's interesting. I mean, have we ever had a draft that like 2 of the top 5 or whatever are not going to be there? I mean, I don't remember that happening. I think it's, and I'm sure Roger Goodell is probably, I don't know. He can't be pleased with that.
The league can't be. Yeah, the league can't be happy about that. There's absolutely no question, but that the league can't be happy about that. And I just, regardless of how you feel about Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota, for that matter, I would not want either one of these young men to miss that opportunity, to miss out on that opportunity to walk across the stage, get that hug, that bear hug from Roger Goodell. People love to make fun. I make fun of it, but it is a great moment.
It is. I mean, these kids have been, think about all the kids in their backyard, pretending that they got drafted or pretending that they caught the pass in the NFL. I mean, that's a lifetime of hard work and everything that they've done. I mean, yes, we all make fun of Roger Goodell and the close hugs and the close talking and all that, but it's a very cool moment. I mean, and for their whole family. I mean, but yeah, it's interesting that I guess so. But Mariota is going to be in Hawaii, right, with his family? Is that the?
I think that's what
I think that's what it is. I don't know. Yeah. I guess we'll have to see if and like you said, it could all be planted stories, and they might, they both might end up being there. You never know.
Yeah, you never. There's still time and opportunity for them to change their mind. It would make me sad for them to miss that opportunity. That's basically all that I want to say about that. We're going to talk about Jameis Winston sort of tangentially a little bit later. But anyway, one of the big topics of today's show that we're going to talk about is it revolves a lot around what happened last week, not just in the National Football League, although it was really kind of a bad week to be a woman in sports media last week. I forgot, and I should have put this on the show production agenda. But there were 2 talk show hosts in Chicago. Speaking of Chicago, who really had some bad things to say about a colleague. But it was a bad week last week in a lot of areas, and so the topic that we're going to discuss mostly today is going to revolve around the theme that men just don't trust women. They don't trust it. They don't trust us. There's a very, very, very good article about it. I believe it came from the Huffington Post, a writer writing for the Huffington Post, and and he talked about it too. How it's weird that we trust men when when they express an emotion, but let a woman communicate some sort of emotional response to something, and the automatic reaction is to dismiss it. Don't you think, Jennifer?
I'm sorry, no, I was just going to say, or dismiss it, or just like pound on it as if it was this, like perfect example obviously is, what happened with Ashley Judd. She made, an emotional response to a basketball game, which is very normal, and yet everyone piles on her and makes it like she's this horrible human being for calling the other team dirty or and men do it all day long. That's their thing. So, it's interesting though, because when I did read that, and I guess I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because later, you want to talk about kind of the women on social media and creepy guys and all of that. But I will say it's interesting from like in my personal perspective and what my personal Twitter experience, I don't have any of that, and I don't know. It's like I was thinking about this morning, and I don't know if it's because, you know, my Twitter name, if I have mommy in the name, and so people seem to like, you know, I don't know what it is, but I've never experienced it. I don't have the trolls and the creepy guys, and, you know, I don't know if it's because I'm openly, you know, a mom and a wife, and you know, and people know I'm happily married and all of that. I don't know if that's what it is, or if I just kind of, maybe I'm not high profile enough, you know, because trust me, I've read Michelle Beadle's mentions, and I've read Katie, you know, Nolan's mentions. I mean, I see what people do, and I see the retweets of everybody else, and I don't know how, you know, I've been somewhat immune to it. It's really odd. Like I've had very little experience with it, and I know I'm lucky, and I know that I'm not sure how it's happened, but I've really had nothing but respect on Twitter, and it's kind of odd because I know I'm definitely alone, you know, or somewhat alone on that matter. You know, because I see it all the time, and of course it sickens me. But I'm like, I don't know how I kind of have been exempt from it. It's really odd, but you know, I somehow have.
Yeah, you know, some women get it worse than others. Definitely, some women get it worse than others, and it's you know, the whole social media, being a woman on social media, that whole phenomena is definitely something that we're going to talk about a little later on in the show. But the author of this Huffington Post article, his point was, and it really is spot on, what he does, and he's writing about his reaction in response to his own wife. So, you know, this is someone that he's intimate with, and by all, you know, by everything that we know and hold dear, he should trust her. I mean, he married her, right?
Right.
But this is what he said. He said, well, what he doesn't trust is her feelings. And he said when she approaches him about something that she's pissed off about or emotional about, his first reaction is, what's wrong? But then his second reaction is, oh, she has to be overreacting. And I think that you know, I think that is common. It's far more common maybe than you know, than we might want to admit. You know, you see it in, you know, you see it in a lot of. I mean, speaking of being, you know, a woman on social media and expressing, you know, opinions on social media, I can't count the number of times that I've been weighing in on a subject, you know, and I'm a big victims' rights advocate. I do my best to support women and to do what I can to empower women, and I cannot count the number of times I've had somebody, you know, and it's usually a male, come into my mentions and say, well, of course the woman would say that. Of course the woman would do this. Of course the woman would do that. Like we're some sort of special species that is less than human. And I do think that is part of the problem here, that for far too long, and it, you know, history speaks for itself, women have sort of been viewed as second-class citizens and, you know, property, and less than being a human being, because, and we're going to talk about this later, you know, with what George McCaskey had to say about the alleged victim, one of the alleged victims in the Ray McDonald case. You know, when a woman expresses an opinion or states, you know, the facts about something, she's biased. That's the other thing. I can't count the number of times I've weighed in on an opinion, and you had an opinion about something. Oh, you're just biased. You know, what kind of bullshit is that? If you can't come at me with something better than that, I mean, I just don't have no time for you.
No, I hear you on that for sure.
You know, I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's. I don't even, you know, it's hard to even have this discussion because it's just, you know, it's so frustrating, you know. And I know for you, you're specifically, like you said, you're you know, a victim's advocate, and I think that's, you know, and it's awesome that you're out there doing that, because obviously it's, you know, it's necessary. I mean, women, for some reason, you know, from way back when, like you said, seen as property, and that's just kind of unfortunately been passed down from generation to generation. And so men, and then there's also the aspect of men there's the whole men being told not to be sensitive and not to tell their feelings, so that when a woman does that, it's always like, oh, you're just being, a woman. But yet if men were to actually speak, their minds on the sensitive side and show, it's one of those things, there's a whole campaign out there now, with people telling boys they're not allowed to cry, they're not allowed to, and we're trying to change that in society so that men realize that you can cry and you can be sensitive and you can tell your feelings, so that you can bridge the gap between the men and women. Because that's, those stereotypes are so put in there that now it's like when a woman says something, it's like, oh, you're just being a woman. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I'm a human. I have feelings,
Yeah, weren't you on the show where we talked about toxic masculinity?
No.
And Terry Crews and all that. One of the first shows that I did, we had an
Maybe
opportunity
it was me. I can't
About,
remember.
I can't remember yesterday. Good Lord.
Exactly. I'm saying maybe it was me. I don't know.
Lord, I slept. Yeah, those brain cells are, as you get older, your brain cells decrease. But no, we talked about Terry Crews and this whole topic of toxic masculinity, which says that, men have to ignore their female side. Men don't cry. Men aren't empathetic. They're not sensitive. They're, they have to be the macho,
right.
Male who distances himself and separates himself from emotions and from crying and things of that nature. It's a great topic, and I want to talk a whole lot more about it. Definitely that factors into it without question. It factors into it, and it's a very interesting discussion. But along those lines, moving into the three we talked about the Chicago radio host, but there are three main things that happened last week that kind of factor into all of this. And the first one, it started with, of course, the Aaron Hernandez trial is going on, right? And that's, I know, right? I mean, it sort of casts a pall over the whole, National Football League. And then you've got the Darren Sharper thing, with him pleading guilty to multiple counts of being a rapist. Darren Sharper is a serial rapist. He's pled guilty.
He's calculated. That's even worse. It's like he planned with, it's not that it's worse than regular rape, but still, it's so disgusting when you think about, he just spent years like calculating and drugging, and it's so vile.
And we don't even know if all the victims have come forward. Look at Bill Cosby. We're knocking
there's
out.
I'm sure there's plenty more in Bill Cosby. Obviously,
exactly.
There's no way there's not.
They're still coming forward, and with no other desire than just to tell their story and to make sure that people, understand that this is the thing, and that, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. How many does it take for you to believe? How many? How many victims have to come forward before you believe just one? And clearly the answer is more than one, but we're at almost 40, and I bet you there are still people out there that don't believe that Bill Cosby.
Oh, there's people defending him. There were people at his, he's doing a tour right now, and there are people out there, defending him and saying that people are just, they're just attention whores, and they just want, it's like, really, 50 of them? Come on, And you've got high-profile people coming forward, actresses and models, and, they have no reason to come forward other than the truth, Yeah,
it's just crazy. But Jerry Jones, what we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail, Jerry Jones had this to say about, of course, the Dallas Cowboys just signed Greg Hardy to a very incentive-laden contract, and this is what Jerry Jones had to say. He's paid a terrific price. Had he not had this incident, his contract would be one like Ndamukong Suh, possibly, but he doesn't have that. Well, Jerry, forgive me if I'm not crying real tears over this quote-unquote terrific price that Greg Hardy paid for beating the shit out of his ex-girlfriend.
Yep.
I'm sorry if my sympathies aren't with you and with poor Greg Hardy.
Yeah, poor Greg Hardy's wallet. Yeah, it's disgusting. But you know what? It goes back to the NFL, they don't care. They want to win. You know what I mean? They don't care what happens along the way. It's the same with, like you just said, Aaron Hernandez. It's looking right now like he may actually get off, and I guarantee you he'll be on a team. They don't care. The bottom line for them is winning, and they don't care what happens along the way. They don't care how many women get beaten. They don't care how many people get killed. They don't care about, drunk drive. Whatever it is that these people are doing off the field, they can pretend that they care a little bit, but they don't. We know that. They want somebody on the field that's going to, win for them, that's going to, make them money, bring the Super Bowl trophy home, all of that, and they don't care. They will push all of that aside.
Yeah.
And it's obvious. It's obvious with, the Bears and the Ray McDonald. It's obvious with, Jerry Jones. And like I said, I guarantee you if Aaron Hernandez somehow gets off, which sadly it's looking like that's a huge possibility, he'll be on a team. He will.
That trial is very interesting. I've caught some of it. I haven't been able to catch all of it, and honestly, I don't want to.
No, I've just heard, I've just heard wrap ups and stuff on the radio.
I've kept up with it.
Yeah.
He does
haven't really
actually
kept up.
He does actually face one more charge. I think there's the 2012 double murder that he's still going to stand trial. Aaron Hernandez has allegedly done a lot of really bad stuff. This isn't the first murder that he's been connected to, so that's pretty. So
hopefully they'll get him on one of them. But this current trial, it just seems like there's some holes that they're going to be able to poke through. And if you put, you know how it is. If they put any doubt in there, he's going to walk, at least for this one. Then,
There's a civil case out there, too, I think filed by the dude, his friend. And I always laugh when his friend that he shot in the face. But he didn't die.
Right, exactly.
He didn't die. He lived. It's okay. He lived. He just got shot in the face.
Right.
But he sued him civilly, so he's got a lot of legal. But it will be interesting to see what kind of hoops that these teams might go through to try to justify maybe giving him a look or whatever. Because this is what was sort of touched upon this. The Chicago Bears just signed Ray McDonald, a guy who had his own brushes with the law, accused of domestic violence, and then later accused of rape. He came out and said that he was going to sue the alleged victim, I think in the second incident, which made me laugh. I really hope that he does, because that
they're not the same woman. Is it two different women?
I think that it's two different women.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it is. Two different women, and actually, you guys know that I have a kind of a bit of a tussle with Pro Football Talk, and as I was preparing for this show today, I happened upon an article written over there at Pro Football Talk where it said that he actually had sued the second alleged victim, but he hasn't done that. You might want to get your facts right, PFT. Pretty much all I've got to say about that after your little victim shaming incident with Nicole Holder. But anyway, this is what Chicago Bears
I have to say real quick, I actually stopped, obviously looking or paying any attention to PFT way back. I think this was like 3 or 4 years ago when Florio came out with that big article about how NFL players have to schedule when they're having their kids, and how dare they have a baby like during the season. And it was a whole, it was like basically.
No way, I missed that one.
Yeah, it was like 3 or 4 years ago, and that was the end for me. And the article was disgusting. Like I'm not even getting all the facts straight of what he was saying, but it was deplorable. Everything, it was ridiculous. It's like, you're really suggesting this? Like it was a horrible article. And ever since then, I don't even pay attention to it, except for when there's controversy. Yeah.
I missed that one. I've had like a little bit of a love-hate relationship, I suppose you would say, with PFT going way back. Some of what gets done there, and I like Michael David Smith a lot. and I enjoy his work. But some of what gets done over there is just, it at the least it's head scratching, and at the worst it's vomit inducing, or worse. But anyway,
right.
this is what George McCaskey had to say. I tweeted out the article earlier. Later on, he says something even worse. But he said he's talking about they interviewed a bunch of people, and most of them were people friendly to Ray McDonald. But whether they talked to if there's just one victim or two, this is what he had to say, and I'm quoting directly. An alleged victim, I think, much like anyone else who has a bias in this situation, there's a certain amount of discounting in what they have to say. And blah, 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 blah. And then later on, he's asked a question, when character issues or the legal issues involving a woman, as in the case with the sexual assault, do you feel a deeper accountability to your mother, who is Virginia McCaskey, by the way, who dresses fabulously, and I wish I could dress like her. But anyway, do you feel a deeper accountability to your mother, who is obviously still such a big part of the organization? And then he says, I don't think so, because to me there's an element of reverse sexism there. Now, I can't even begin to wrap my mind around the first part of what we're talking about before we got to the second part. The whole thing was just gross. First of all, and this is part of the problem, and it goes back to the whole, men don't trust women. You don't trust us when we talk about rape. You don't trust us when we talk about domestic violence. You just don't trust us. You don't trust our feelings. You damn sure don't trust our opinions because, oh my God, bias. And it's just disgusting.
I just can't believe that. The whole reverse sexism, that's just. I can't even believe that came out of his mouth. I don't really understand. It's sad to me that his mother, who is such a big part of the organization, that he doesn't have enough respect for her, along with all women, really. To I don't even know what to say here. It's frustrating.
You'll trust, and he also said there was something else that he said. He was asked about whether he believed in keeping a player like Ray McDonald on a short leash. And this, to me, is probably the most telling of the whole interview. He said no, that he didn't believe in short leashes because he is a human being. But he doesn't afford the victim that status. He doesn't afford the victim the credibility or frankly, the respect that a human being deserves. Ray McDonald, who's the subject of multiple accusations against him, gets to get treated like a human being, but the victim doesn't get to be treated like a human being because bias.
Yep, because bias, and because, of course, like I said earlier, the bottom line is he wants to win football games, and Ray McDonald gives him a chance to do that, and the victim is just a victim. It's sad and it's disgusting, but that's unfortunately the culture. Well, the culture of the NFL, and then also society, really, at this point.
Yeah. It's not like it's exactly, isolated to one area either. I mean, you see it, repeatedly throughout a number of different areas. This just happens to be the topic that, that we're kind of focused on.
Right.
I want to jump on down to I wanted to talk about Jimbo Fisher. Just real briefly, let me talk about Jimbo Fisher. I jokingly call Jimbo Fisher Dumbo Fisher because a lot of the times, a lot of things that come out of his mouth strike me as being less than smart. But he said something about Jameis Winston that that kind of feeds into this, and then I want to talk about Sierra Leone. But he was talking about, obviously the character questions, the off the field things that that Jameis Winston is having to answer for. And he said this on WAE, a radio station down there in Tampa. So why is there a question? Because of the character assassination that he's lived through in the media and the misinformation and half-truths that have been printed. What amazes me about this whole process is the unprofessionalism of a lot of major networks and a lot of major outlets that did not report the whole truth of the situation and only slanted it for their own opinion. One of the things that is sort of striking to me about that is, frankly, most of the coverage has been very positive for Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is, regardless of how you feel about him, I think most people agree that he's going to go either at the top selection to Tampa Bay or somewhere within the next 2 or 3. He's going to go in the top 5. Right. I don't think that there's any question about that, because basically teams and a lot of fans don't give a shit that he might have raped a woman. They just don't care that he might have raped a woman. And I'm sorry if that offends you, Jimbo Fisher, but you know what? Welcome to our world, honey.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the world where a victim gets called bias and doesn't even get interviewed in the process of trying to determine whether or not a guy might have character concerns, or she does, and her opinion is completely dismissed because, hey, bias. It's a tough life for Jameis Winston, who's going to make millions of dollars as a top selection in the NFL draft, even though there are a lot of questions about what went down on a particular night down there in Florida that didn't get investigated properly, that Florida State is the subject of a Title IX investigation for, and and I want to say this too, along the whole lines of men just don't trust women. If you do some research, go out there and do your own research. There are a number of women who've looked at the Jameis Winston case and said, "Yep, I recognize that. Sounds just like what happened to me." But we don't trust those because, hey, victim bias, right?
Yep. Yeah, poor Winston, poor character assassination. Yeah, he's got a rough road ahead. Let me tell you what. It's kind of ridiculous. Actually, it's more than kind of. It's very ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, so that's it. The wrap up of the NFL week that we wished wasn't. But we're not done, because hey, it's awesome being a woman. It really is awesome being a woman. But I wanted to talk about. I'm not the biggest Jamie Foxx fan in the world. Now, I kind of lumped Jamie Foxx in with Trevor Noah. I called them 2-cent comedians, basically because their comedy is cheap. It's not really all that funny, and it's just cheap. Cheap stuff to to try to get a laugh or get a reaction or whatever. The subject of the topic of comedy always brings out strong opinions because people don't want their comedy to be censored. They want and comedy should be raw, right? I mean, it's definitely an area where you have to cross the line to know where the line is. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you, Jen?
Yes. However,
Trevor Noah. Yeah. However, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and Trevor Noah, if you're not familiar, is a South African comedian. He's biracial. His mother, I believe, was Jewish, a white Jewish woman, and he's a comedian, and he was just hired. I had missed all this because last week in the National Football League was so bad that I was like, I'm full up. I can't handle, so I'm off the internet, off social media for a few days. But so he got hired to. Jon Stewart at the Daily Show is he's leaving the Daily Show. He's going to do other things, and Trevor Noah, a younger guy, has been hired in his place. I knew a little bit. I had seen some things about Trevor Noah. I haven't really paid that much attention to him, really, to be honest. And then when I saw that announcement had gone down, and then there was a raging controversy around it. So I looked into it, and here's the thing. I don't pretend to know everything there is to know about Trevor Noah's comedy, but what I do know is that he's not very funny from the little that I have seen. He's being taken to task, and rightfully so. I'm sorry, not sorry. He's being taken to task, and rightfully so, for some of the tweets that he has tweeted in the past. And to be fair, they go back, I think, to 2010. They're not funny. They're very offensive. I think everybody pretty much agrees they're incredibly offensive. Making offensive jokes. He loves him some fat chick jokes, by the way.
I saw those.
Yeah, making fun of fat chicks, it's cheap. That's why you're a 2-cent comedian, Trevor Noah. Making fun of fat chicks is cheap, not funny. It's so easy to make fun
it's a low-hanging fruit.
It's so easy to make fun of those who are marginalized in our society without thought to what you're doing.
My issue with Trevor Noah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
No, I was just going to say my issue. As a woman who happens to be Jewish, so I fall into two of the categories that he offends.
Mm-hmm. I did not know
my issue with it all is just going for, like I said, the low-hanging fruit and the stereotypes. Like, that drives me. Like, if you're going to say something funny, say something funny. But to, do a stereotype of, he said some, Jewish chicks don't give blowjob. I mean, come on. Like, that's just so, I don't know. It's so it's like just, promoting stereotypes. It's been done for so many years, and it's not funny, and it's like, there's also the, you wonder, okay, if, people are saying, well, you can't vilify the guy for a few tweets over 4 years or whatever it is. But it's like the fact that he's willing to type it and do it publicly. Yeah. It's obviously on his brain. Like, okay, for example, my husband, this was years ago. His boss, they're in a full meeting. We're talking conference room, 20 people, and she's up there and she says something, but we Jewed him down. And my husband just his face, everyone in the room is like, did she just say that? In a full meeting of mixed company, you don't even know who's sitting there. Mm-hmm. You got 20 people. And it's the fact that rolled off her tongue so easily, it's what kind of person are you? That's my issue with him. It's if he's willing to put that out there and it's just not even funny, then you're what's in his brain? What else is there? But at the time, actually, I didn't realize that he was half Jewish, so that I guess changes things a bit. But I still, it's just you wonder, what kind of guy is he? If and I, like you said, comedy, you don't want to censor it, like you said, and you don't know where the line is if you don't cross it. But at the same time, it's kind of tasteless. It's just not funny to me,
Yeah, and now I also didn't know when this first started going down that, that he was half Jewish. It doesn't really. Okay, it sort of does change it, I suppose, for me.
A little.
A couple of things. A little. Yeah, a couple of things here. First of all, if Trevor Noah wants to be a terrible comedian out there in the world that I don't care about, that's fine. But to me, The Daily Show is kind of sacred territory. The Daily Show has been a show that, and I haven't always agreed with Jon Stewart. Don't get me wrong. I haven't always agreed with Jon Stewart, and he's had issues of his own. The Daily Show has long had a woman's problem. It's long been under attack for the fact that it didn't hire women writers. It didn't utilize women. They got better. Jon Stewart and the show got better after criticism, but it's had a woman problem for a while. And first of all, this does nothing to change that or to help that. And second, to me, it is it's like defacing a national treasure or a monument. It you know, I'm sorry, I don't think Trevor Noah is worthy of the Daily Show. Sorry,
yeah,
not
it's
sorry,
funny.
I don't.
I happen to be, I know it's you know, horrible, but I actually don't watch the Daily Show. I never have.
Oh, yeah?
So I don't have that, and I know it's crazy. People are always like, "What do you mean you don't watch it?" And I don't know. I never started, so I just never did. So I can't really speak about that, but I do, you know, from what I've read, I don't think he's funny, and I know, and I actually like Jon Stewart. I mean, I've seen him in other things, and you know, but I don't know about the Daily Show itself and how, you know, because I never watched it.
Yeah, you know, as I tried to find it. There's a quote out there by someone famous that says, you know, what you find funny or humorous says everything about you. And you know, there are a lot of articles out there that, you know, forgive Trevor Noah, judge him by his intentions. I think I am judging him by his intentions. A guy that would feel comfortable and think it's funny, you know, to tweet offensive things about, about, you know, marginalized, you know, people, particularly women, particularly fat women who don't meet society's outrageous and completely unworkable and unattainable vision of beauty. You know, we're not all out here doing coke and, you know, eating mud and trying to be anorexic thin.
We're not?
You know. No. I know that's shocking and amazing because that's all you really ever see, you know, but we're not. You know, we're real women with bodies, and you know what? Some of us are facts. Fucking deal with it.
Yep. I hear you. And it's like I said, you know, like we just said, it's completely low-hanging fruit. It's like, ooh, make fun of a fat woman. Woo, you know, it's so like, yawn.
Yeah, right. It's not funny, and you know, so I've tweeted out there's an article. You know, we've had this discussion before. We had it about rape jokes, and I tweeted out an article from Jezebel by Lindy West, talking about how to make a rape joke, but it's, you know, it kind of fits for a lot of things, and I want to quote from it, and then we're going to move on because we're getting ready to wind down and move into the fantasy sports portion of the show. But here's what it said: the world is full of terrible things, and we're talking about rape jokes in this article, including rape, and it is okay to joke about them. But the best comics use their art to call bullshit on those terrible parts of life and make them better, not worse. The key, unless you want to be called a garbage-flavored dick on the internet by me and other humans with souls and brains, is to be responsible, to be a responsible person when you construct your jokes. And
that's awesome.
I think I think that pretty much says it all. So I got to talk. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk about being a woman on social media, and we're going to finish up with that. But before we get there, just two quick things. Sierra Leone has, I think it's a law. I meant to tweet out this article too. Sierra Leone has banned pregnant girls, teenage girls, from attending school, as if I just can't even, because
actually the quote is visibly pregnant. So I guess if you're not showing, you can still go to school.
Yeah, as if again, as if, you know, pregnant young girls are less than human, less than, you know, a second-class citizen, less than worthy, because they might encourage, seeing a pregnant young teenager might encourage more, more. Hey, here's a thought. How about you go out there and find out which of your teenage boys are having unprotected underage sex with young teenage girls and impregnating them, and maybe they shouldn't be going to school either, because you know what? They might encourage other young teenage boys, you know, to have unprotected sex and impregnate females.
I can't even wrap my head around this. This is the stupidest thing I've ever, like, seriously. Like, how So you're going to take a teenage girl and make her, and then give her less of an advantage in life. Oh, let's not educate her so she can just be. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't.
What are you going to do about that baby who's going to have a mother that is unprepared to enter the workforce, that is going to likely be forced to take some menial job that won't pay dip? And, I mean, there's so many things that are wrong with this that, I just can't even. I just can't even. We have to do better. We just have to do better. All right, so we're going to finish up. We kind of touched upon this. We're going to have some fun with this one. Being a woman on social media is so, and some days it's really fun and it's interesting, and I'll just sit back and laugh. I wasn't doing much laughing last week, but it is kind of interesting, and so I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about how to interact with your fellow female tweeters without being a huge creepster. And of course, I'm a woman. Jennifer's a woman. We're women here. I don't know that. I mean, I don't profess to speak for all women, right? I mean, we definitely are different. We don't see eye to eye on everything. We have differences. There's no question at all that is the case. But I think that I can speak for certainly the majority of women when I say, hey, dudes, dick pics as an introduction, not a good thing. You might want to rethink that whole process because, there are a lot of ways to introduce yourself to a fellow female tweeter that you've, kind of met or Facebooker, that you've met on social media. You think she's cool, she acts cool. Messaging her a dick photo as an introduction isn't the best way to go around it, okay? It's not the best way to get out.
That's crazy to me. Like I said, I've never experienced. So people just will send you like a dick pic, like, hey, I'm Joe, nice to meet you. I mean, first of all, dicks are disgusting anyway. Like, they just are. We don't want to see them. They're not pretty.
Let me say this. I'm not against the dick pic, okay? I'm not anti-dick pic. There's a lot to be said for the dick pic, okay? I like to go shopping before I buy something, and, if you want to send me a picture of the merchandise, I might be okay with it. And I say might because, you know what, I got to get to know you a little bit first. At some point we might move into the whole, hey, okay, let's, I'm not saying that I would. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, but it's not a great way to introduce yourself to the women that you meet on social media. It's not a very good. There might be some women out there who like that, but I would propose to you that they're outliers, that they're not the standard, that they're, if you find one and that works for you, you go, both of you. But I think as a general rule that we can say dick pics as an introduction, not good.
That's hilarious. I didn't even.
But going from there, it can get a little tricky, right? Because there are some differences between the sexes, and there's no question whatsoever about that. And so we're going to continue to have this discussion. It's going to be an ongoing discussion. But one thing that I've happened to notice over the course. I'm sure that it's happened. Listen, and let me just go ahead and say this. I want to say it in regard to Trevor Noah, and I'll say it in regard to just to being on social media in general. We all fuck up. I know that I mess up on Twitter a lot. But, hey, Comedy Central didn't hire me to host the Daily Show, although, really, let's be honest here, they should have. I mean, they totally should have. They should have hired me. And then I would have no problem apologizing for anything y'all might find offensive. I'm not going to say I might, I try to do better, but I'm still going to mess up because I'm human. But we all mess up on social media. We're here to help. We love you. We're here to help. This isn't let's hate on the dudes who send us dick pics in our messaging. We're not hating on you. We're trying to help you. This is an intervention.
Help you out for the future, so that you can be successful in meeting women.
we're here to help. So, it gets kind of tricky, and then I was noticing over the course of just the past couple of weeks, when I'm out there, and you have real life girlfriends, girlfriends that know you in real life that are either they're close by or they could be far away, but you have that personal connection. You can pick up the phone, you can text them, but you also have your Twitter girlfriends, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have your little Twitter pals that maybe you haven't advanced enough in your friendship to exchange phone numbers, or maybe you just like tweeting to each other out there on the Twitters. I know I have a girlfriend that we'll text each other. Good Lord, if our texts ever get released, we are in trouble. But we'll also be tweeting, and we'll be texting and then tweeting about it, and so it's just kind of this fun thing. Sometimes we just want to be out there tweeting with our girlfriends, but it invariably happens that some well-meaning friend of ours will jump in and want to hijack the conversation, and and do whatever, and and I don't want to tell you not to do that, because it may we may be fine with that, but it happens all the time, and you might, if you're if you're one of the ones who are doing that, maybe stop and think, hey, these girls are having a conversation. They might not want me to butt in. They might just want to be having a Twitter conversation with the girls about girl stuff, doing girl things, and you just kind of be aware about that,
I find that it's, in that situation, it's almost like the same people that do it. You know what I mean? There's certain people out there that in your head, you're like, so-and-so is going to show up any minute, and then they do. You know what I mean? Do you ever, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
There's certain people out there that that you're like, oh, so-and-so, like, they're going to show up and have their 2 cents, or try to make it sexual when it wasn't. It was just another conversation.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and I was thinking that we might go there too, and that's the other thing. The whole sexual thing. You see some girls tweeting on Twitter. Maybe you find them. You probably find them attractive. They're maybe they've got great personality. They're tweeting, and you jump in with a, hey, look, a threesome.
Right.
My fantasy. That kind of stuff, and it's like, ew. I mean, it's creepy.
I know. No, that I have seen, and that does it. It kind of just makes me laugh. I usually just ignore it, or you're like, ha ha, and then you just kind of move on. But I think it's funny, and like I said, it's always like the same. Like, there's just certain people out there that it's coming.
Yeah. There are definitely repeat offenders. I'm not going to name names. I love you guys too much to ever do that. To ever do that. The other part of it is, let's say that. Excuse me. Let's say that you're having a conversation with your girlfriends on Twitter or Facebook about a subject, and let's say sports. It's about sports. It's about football, and you're talking about a play or whatever. Invariably, there's that one guy who wants to come in and mansplain things to you. See, this is how it is, and that is the worst. You know what I'm talking about, Jen.
No, I do know what you're talking about. I don't, like I said, I don't get that often, but I've seen it, so I know. Because, of course, men, there's definitely a certain section of men out there that think that women, obviously women can't possibly know about football because we don't play it and we've never played it and we have no idea what we're talking about. So there's that,
we don't
for
have
sure.
That thing, and we don't have that thing between our legs,
Right. The dick is what allows you to know football, nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, yeah, there's definitely those guys. I mean, like I said, I'm fortunate that I don't really get it that much. Most of the men that I interact with on Twitter and that interact with me actually respect my knowledge, I think, at least, from what I can tell. So I don't get too much of it, but I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it all over, everyone else's mentions. I mean, people that retweet, stuff out there, and I see the things that people say to people, and I'm just like, wow, like, women really do, we have the same brain capacity as you. I hate to tell you, we can read about it and we understand it just like you. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of coaches while they might have, and let's define. Listen, I'll tell you guys a funny story real quick. I played football with my cousins and my brothers, growing up as a young girl, and it got to they didn't want to play with me because they said I was too rough. No. So I mean,
I've never played the game. I've never put pads on in my life. I will tell you that. But I grew. I mean, I was in a situation. My dad was a huge sports guy, and didn't have any sons, and so and he had season tickets. Like we went to Dolphin games. I started in the womb. You know what I mean? It's like I don't remember learning the game of football. It just happened. Yeah. That's just what I grew up. I don't ever remember sitting down and being like, this is this, and it just that's how it. I grew up learning it. It's like a language or something. You just grow up with it. So but that's funny that I never played other than the Thanksgiving Day game. I've never actually played. I've never put a pair of pads on. That's for sure.
Yeah, we did Thanksgiving the Thanksgiving Day game, the family reunion, family picnics. We had a lot of family gatherings.
That's awesome.
And also I did grow up watching it. I can't remember a time when I wasn't watching sports or football, whatever. And so, we might just have our own thoughts on the matter. We might just know about as much as you and, maybe sometimes more. So, I want to think about that before you jump in and try to,
mansplain. That's funny. I've never heard that before. That made me laugh.
Mansplain things to us. And any other things that you see or that happen to you on Twitter that kind of strike you?
No. Like I said earlier, I've been fortunate that I just haven't gotten the backlash and I had one instance where basically I got in a Twitter fight with this guy. He was an intern/board op at the radio station I used to be on, and I was listening to a show which the host is a friend of mine. And he was talking to the board op, and he was asking him about Bruce Jenner. They were talking about Bruce Jenner and all that, and this kid knew nothing of Bruce Jenner other than the Kardashian situation. So then, a couple minutes later, he asked him something else, and he didn't know. So I just tweeted at the host, who's a friend of mine. I was like, hey, your board op might want to brush up on his sports. He's on the radio. So, and I tweeted it to the guy, not the board op. Well, I guess he showed him, obviously. So the board op just came at me like, I don't want to, I shouldn't be told about sports from a mommy or a mom or something like that. And that was so we kind of got into it about that.
Whatever.
I'm like, dude, come on. Yeah, it was just, and that was the only time I've ever experienced it. And, technically, I guess I started it, you know what I mean? But still, he comes back at me with, I don't need to talk about sports with a mom. I was like, oh, God, really? That's what you're going to use? Because God forbid
that's
somebody
not what your mom told me last night.
I know, right? Exactly. I'm because I popped out a kid, I don't know what I'm talking about. I was just look, dude, I'm sorry. If you're going to be on the radio, this is a metro market. If you're going to be on there, you need to know that Bruce Jenner did something in the world of sports other than married to a Kardashian. I'm sorry. That's not, you know what I mean?
It's really important and kind of, historical.
Yeah, and he was like, that was 30 years ago. I don't need to know that shit. I'm like, yeah, you do, dude. It's American history, and he was a huge Olympian. You need to know that. I'm sorry. You just do. So it was kind of, that was the only thing. And, and it was one little isolated incident. And other than that, I've, like I said, I've been fortunate in that. But like I said, I'm not a high-profile lady. So if I was out there Michelle Beadle, the stuff that she endures is crazy. The stuff that people write to her
crazy.
And, all that. And, I'm not such a, high roller like that. But still, I have said, I will say I have been fortunate,
What social media do you use the most? Do you tweet, Facebook? What do you use the most?
I would say Twitter the most. I am on Facebook, but it's, Facebook is mostly my friends and college friends. You know what I mean? No one's going to give me shit on there because they all know me. Twitter's the only one that really are just, it's a bunch of randoms out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you have your friends that you've made, like you said. There's the Twitter friends and all of that. But, I'm on Facebook, but not as much. I mean, it's, it's mostly friends and baby pictures. You know how that is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm mostly Twitter too. Although I did join the Pinterest revolution last week, and kind of enjoying that, getting familiar with that, getting caught up on that.
I've tried to do stuff, and it just confuses me. I feel like I'm like, wow, I'm either like an old lady or what. But like I've tried to look at like recipes and stuff, and I'm just confused. It's just like pictures, and then I'm like, well, where's the?
I haven't figured out how to organize.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I've spent very little time, so maybe and then I don't do anything like Snapchat and all that. I don't even know what any of that is. I feel so old, but I really don't.
Ready to say. And I also I've got a Snapchat account, and I'm going to start.
Well, I assume that's all Dick Pic Central, right?
I have gotten a dick pic through Snapchat yet.
I mean, Snapchat to me that seems like it's all dick pics, but I don't know.
That's so funny. Anyway, all right. Well, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk some fantasy football with Allie Fontana, so stay tuned in. You're listening to Sharona Unfiltered. All right, good morning and welcome back. You're tuned in and listening to Sharona Unfiltered. We're joined now by Allie Fontana, a great fantasy football follow on Twitter, great fantasy sports person. Allie, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be with you. I enjoyed the hour that I listened to while I was actually doing some gardening.
Oh, were you?
So,
What are you working on? What did you plant something? What do you do?
Well, I did. I've done some landscaping, but I was planting herbs. So it was a good way to get something done and listen to the show. I finished my prep already for my piece of it, so it was enjoyable.
Oh, great!
What
great.
I heard. Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of jealous that you're planting herbs. I keep saying that I like to cook. Do you like to cook?
I do, yes. And they're an essential, and I'd much rather pick from my own garden and, buy it in the store. And you have it year round, and it just lasts longer. So
yeah, we did our herbs last weekend in our house, so we're ready to go. We did some herbs as well.
Yeah. Anyway, you talked about some fascinating topics. I know my segment's fantasy, and we have a limited time, but I just want to say that I am a true crime aficionado. Follow a lot of trials, including Hernandez. And while, the big, let's say, the thing against why he might not be found guilty is that, they don't have a motive or the murder weapon. But honestly, I mean, we've seen some bad decisions by jurors in the past, but this is, I mean, he's on so much surveillance. There are so many things in his own house, out in the city, the text. I mean, there's just so much stuff that it would be really a crime if he gets off on this trial.
Yeah.
But as Sharona, you mentioned, he does face another double murder trial, which was supposed to begin in May, and which is going to be postponed because this one, is taking a bit longer, although the prosecution is supposed to rest tomorrow, and they're going to have motions on Friday, and then the defense will call. They've said they only have one witness, but they may bring in one or two more, and hope that, maybe the athletic star will, if they don't have a motive, somebody will say, well, he can't be guilty. We need to see it. But that is not the definition of reasonable doubt. So,
right. I think the big thing, the big hurdle for the prosecution is the lack of the murder weapon. That's hard. That's a hard case.
Well, but that happens. That isn't. If you follow trials, that's not unusual. And not only that, I mean, they have video of his fiancée carrying a box in a bag. I mean, again, it's not one piece; it's the totality of evidence. Right. And they do have pictures of him, even though his lawyers tried to say, "Oh, it could have been an iPad." I mean, he would have to be the unluckiest guy with all of these coincidences, just too many of them. And even if for some reason they'd find him, not guilty, and I'm not sure if there'll be lesser charges. Sometimes after a prosecution presents its case, they can sort of say, well, we're going to include a lesser charge in, the jury instructions. Mm-hmm. The guns and weapons charges are going to be a lot harder because they have tracked a car, money, all of these things. It's going to be very hard for somebody to ignore that. And those charges alone could put him behind bars for a while. So, I mean, it's not inconceivable that he could get off. I mean, O.J. did. There are, Casey Anthony. There's people that have been found not guilty, but I mean, hopefully the jury looks at sort of everything they put together, and some of it has been excruciatingly boring but necessary because of the footprint that this guy has left in so many areas of evidence. And I mean a physical footprint as well as a digital, cellular and all of that. So he might well be on anybody's fantasy roster for a while.
Let's hope not.
I'm very curious to see what the jury does do with this case. I always said that putting together a trial is a lot like it's a puzzle. You have to there are a lot of little pieces out there, and you got to try to pull them together and put them together in a way that creates a picture and that it makes sense for a jury. And I'm very curious to see what they do with it. So it's interesting that you're watching it. I've tried. I just I just can't keep my
I mostly listen to it live. I mostly listen to it. A lot of people YouTube, and then you avoid all of the lengthy sidebars, which is very common in this trial because I don't have that time either. So mostly later in the evening, or if I'm working out, I'll listen to some of it. Particularly certain witnesses, because it's real interesting. But in any case, like I said, he was on our fantasy team, and there are so many other interesting topics to happen. It's been sort of a crazy off season, and so many changes with free agency.
Yeah, Allie, I've been fortunate to talk to you before, but tell everybody how you got into fantasy sports and about your fantasy journey.
Well, my journey began because, like you, I grew up where sports was kind of a very important part of my family. I had only brothers, and they all played football, and we had season tickets I grew up in Philadelphia, to the Eagles, and so I learned at a very young age to love the game and know a lot about it, or, you're just kind of not with the program. And I really enjoyed it, so much of it. So, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12, but even, probably now closer, it's about the year 2000, one of my brothers started a fantasy league, mainly comprised of family members. And, I got into it, but I was very busy at the time with, college and grad school, I should say, not college. I'm older than that. And, working and all of that kind of stuff. And I only kind of put I did it in sort of in a half-assed way. I was present. I always set rosters, but I didn't attack it. And then a few years later, I had finished a project, and it was the start of the season, and I just wanted to kind of really be competitive that year. I was sick of finishing out of the playoffs. And so I started just perusing some websites, and I landed on one that I liked, which was Bruner Boys Fantasy Football. And I lurked a lot. I just, I read the articles and looked at the forums and things like this. But then, I worked as a consultant outside of what I did with sports, and so my natural inclination is to problem solve and find solutions and look for opportunities. And I started just interacting with people because once I caught on pretty quickly, and I started, just a lot of things came together. And then people started responding to me in the forum, and the owner of the site at that time approached me about sort of overseeing the forum. And then I do write professionally, and I started editing and doing some work with some of the people there, and it kind of took off from there. So he was very open for me as a woman, and it was a novelty. This will be, actually, I started officially kind of in that capacity in 2009, so this is really the start of my 7th season as a fantasy analyst. And so in any case, it was one of those things where, I had to kind of just have the confidence that I've been involved with football since I was, 5 years old or 4. It was part of my growing up, and I knew a lot about the game. And my fantasy perspective was informed by kind of understanding the business side of things, how coaching works, what you need to do to. It's not just about a player's skill set; it's about the fit in the team. Around him.
Yeah.
I think that's the kind of thing I've always liked to kind of approach things holistically when I look at fantasy sports, in particular fantasy football. And I think that's kind of, helped me both gain some credibility as an analyst and also, improve my game seriously when I really put my head, my mind to it.
Yeah, I think all three of us sort of have similar experiences that way. I got into fantasy football back in 2005, 2006, somewhere around in that area, and not to say that fantasy football wasn't. Listen, the guy, and it was a keeper league. Get this, it was a keeper league. I was dating a fella who at that time lived in New York City, and he played in a keeper league with a bunch of New Jersey fellas, and they were. This was a serious. They were serious. It was all done by Excel spreadsheets, and I actually had to. They had a guy dropping out. It was a money league, and they had a guy dropping out, and I actually had to interview with the commissioner to even be allowed to enter this league, and it's the whole story. But anyway, it was always for me. It was just fun, But it now has actually kind of turned into a business. And where I'm going with this is I'm finding for the past few years I've started doing fantasy mocks, which I hadn't really done. I'd played a lot of fantasy football, but I hadn't really done much mocking, and I'm finding that it's pretty important.
For me, my little story here, I have you both beat. I started in 96.
Oh, wow.
It was just, I know. It was just, some college friends of mine just, they needed a person, and they knew, obviously I watched sports with them and football, and so they kind of were like, oh, come do this. And my first year in 96, I actually shared a team with a friend of mine. We kind of did it together, and then the next year I was like, screw that, I want my own. So this will be my 19th year, which is kind of crazy. And I actually just started mocking really myself, Sharona. Like, it's funny, just the last couple years. At first, I've always been someone that kind of made fun of the mock. I'm like, that's just stupid, But the last few years I've been doing it. Now, I will say I'm not I'm not doing it now. I know a lot of people are. I can't. I just have too much else going on, in my life that I can't. If not, I'm scared I'll get burnt out if I start already to prep for the season. So I'm kind of a late, I'm an August mocker myself.
Well, I think there's, I have sort of a mixed perspective on it. Obviously, if you kind of work in the business as an analyst, you tend to get sucked into mocks, maybe earlier than other, even committed players like, yourself and obviously Sharona, you've been doing this a long time too and have a presence. But I kind of have wavered on mocks. I will say that it's fun to do it, and I mean, I've done one of these mocks, in February after the Super Bowl because people are kind of just looking for kind of a way to sort of ease their, kind of deal with the Joneses, let's say, from not having like the week-to-week thrill. But for me, I think that now that they've also pushed the NFL draft later than it had been in the past, I prefer to kind of sort through the NFL free agency and at least get through the NFL draft before I start doing it seriously, mainly because there's so many unknowns. And what's interesting, I play in a lot of industry-type leagues, so it's fun and prudent to mock with some of these folks because you also then play in leagues with them, and then you kind of get to see who people like. So if you happen to like that same player, use it as intelligence in terms of, maybe I'm going to have to go around earlier on that person, or I need to be aware of tendencies. So I kind of file that information in my brain if it's as things move along. I also know like who people like, and if you play in leagues where people are, especially with dynasty folks, that's their primary focus, not that they don't have an appreciation for other forms, but they're very high on some younger players, and they might grab that person a lot sooner than I'd be comfortable doing if it's a non-keeper or dynasty league, obviously. So to me, you can then, somebody else who's maybe a more seasoned player falls to you, and you can capitalize on that. So, I mean, you use the mocks. It also helps to kind of just get a feel as you get closer to camp and all of that to kind of see where the barometer is on some of these players. And it also helps you to kind of formulate, hey, I didn't know a lot about that player, but so many people are looking at him. Maybe I need to do some research. So I look at it, in that perspective. But you can definitely burn out on mocks. And so it's about using it to your advantage without, but I think it's better when you're actually playing with some of the people, and make sure you're mocking in the format that you're going to play. If you're playing in, standard leagues, mocking in PPR may not be as valuable to you, or vice versa. And also,
definitely.
Exactly. But, it's sort of a relative importance, and my personal opinion has evolved over the last few years where I tend to like to see how things shake out a bit before I, seriously mock, mainly, but sometimes it can help you just kind of get up to speed quickly in, off-season changes and just some things that are going on. So that's my take on mock drafts.
Yeah, it is. I agree about the tendencies and also trends. And certainly those trends are subject to change after, free agency concludes. And there's going to be another round of free agency after the draft takes place and training camps go down. But some of the things that I've noticed, it's interesting. The wide receivers, the wide receiver crop is pretty thin. I've noticed a lot of drafters are avoiding guys like Cordarrelle Patterson and John Brown, just to name a couple of younger guys, and even drafting over those guys, drafting incoming rookies. It's going to change, but what do you think? What are your expectations for Cordarrelle Patterson and John Brown next year?
Well, I'll give you, I have more of an expectation on Cordarrelle Patterson, just mainly because, keep in mind, and I looked this up, he was the 17th wide receiver off the team, which puts him in sort of a borderline mid-range to wide receiver for fantasy. So the expectations were very high. Also because North Turner was there, so there's all this excitement built around this guy, but it was all build up. So a lot of people went early on Cordarrelle Patterson, and though he had a big week one, it was very slim pickings after, most of that. And I think he had two good games maybe in week 13 and 14, and then he basically, I think then he had an injury and he was basically out for the remaining couple of weeks. So you certainly didn't get a return on your investment. The take I have on Patterson is...
Listen, Allie, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to, I held on to him all year because I'm Rick Astley, and I can't let go. And
that was like Bishop Sankey for me last year. I hung on to Sankey forever. I was like, I just can't let him go.
My gosh.
We all have players like that, people that you just kind of think, and really it depends. In a very deep league, you might just keep on, but think about it. I ended up picking up Charles Johnson and starting Charles Johnson in very deep leagues, and you could start Charles Johnson over Patterson. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing is, he was also one of these gadget players, which I think has been an issue for other players as well. How do they actually use this talent? And, how to integrate him. Now, there has been talk that he's had a hard time coming to grips with the offense. So I'm not putting all the blame on the coaching staff because obviously the player has to commit. I will say this is his third year. It took Des Bryant 3 years before Des Bryant really kind of had his breakthrough moment. I think you can find he'll probably drop in the mock drafts. I looked at my fantasy league mock drafts, 114 of them that have been done so far, and whereas Patterson, as I said, was the 17th wide receiver last year, right now he is the 46th maybe. He's dropped considerably in drafts so far. So, that, and he's like an 11th round pick. So when you can get value for a player coming off a bad season, that's why I think it's too soon to write him off. But it just depends. I wouldn't go early on him, even if he has a good, preseason, which has happened. I would want to see the results. But if he's sitting there in the 10th or 11th round, at this point, that may change again based on what happens, then I'd be willing to maybe give him a shot as my 5th wide receiver. Again, it depends on your league setup and all of that, but it's just about not overpaying and not writing someone off prematurely. And for
now,
John
are we talking
Brown,
standard leagues or dynasty?
Dynasty, no, I was really talking about non-dynasty. So we're talking, but in this particular redraft leagues, so that would be both standard and PPR, and even the sort of combo leagues where you have, I'm just giving you rough cuts. On the keeper of dynasty, I don't think he could be, if somebody wants to get rid of him, he could be a great trade for you in a dynasty or keeper league as part of a package. Somebody might unload him for dirt cheap. Right. So having him sitting on your bench, again, I think the talent's there. We know that talent isn't enough, so I wouldn't discard him, write him off completely right now because he did have a bad season last year. I look to get a bargain for him. And, like I said, I think he's worth looking at, but it'll be interesting to see. It looks like, what they do there. Greg Jennings is gone. Charles Johnson's there. I think Jarius Wright's still there. So he should have a role. They've said that they're going to kind of incorporate him more to get away from sort of the gadget feel and make him more a part of the offense. So that's coach speak. Now we just need to see that happen.
Well, plus we also have Teddy Bridgewater, another year under his belt, so we'll see what he does,
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then John Brown,
Cordero Patterson's, he's had 3 different quarterbacks in the short time that he's been in, 3 or 4 different quarterbacks, 4 actually, in the short time that he's been here. And there's something to say about that third-year breakout season for wide receivers.
That's true, and he's also had some instability on the coaching staff. So I think we might have even had a Twitter discussion last year about Brian Quick. Brian Quick was another guy, although in his case he came from a smaller school and didn't play kind of in a pro-style offense, and he had a devil of a time picking up the offense. So, we started to see signs last year that it was coming together before he had the injury. So, I mean, like I said, I think you have to look at these players individually, and we'd hate, if we were written off after you get off to a slow start and whatever it is you're doing. But, then there comes a time where you just say no to a player, because every year, if we're just talking about potential and talent, it gets very old. So, that doesn't score you points. It has to kind of all come together. And, like I said, but look for these guys that come off down years as a rule of thumb, as either a bargain or some kind of, especially if they're young and enormously talented. And he does have both of those things going for him.
Allie, I want to ask you about the DFS explosion and what you think about it. It's an area that I'm considering dipping my toe into. Why should I do it, or why shouldn't I do it?
Well, if you like immediate gratification, as opposed to, that's something to be said for DFS. If you want to play the weekly game, you also get to draft within salary cap constraints, usually the team of your choice, your own dream team for that particular week. And, I will say that it's a very different mindset, and there are some things that I'd recommend anybody who decides to play daily fantasy kind of understanding how you're looking for value with the salary and what you have to do to actually win or finish in the money, because there are people that do this for a living. I mean, they are just literally playing daily fantasy, multiple sports, and capitalizing on some big time opportunities. It is fun if you don't want to. For some people, they don't want to get into managing a team over the long haul. I still like building a team and managing it, dealing with the waiver wire and all that kind of thing. There's still a place for that structure in my heart, but I have played daily fantasy for maybe this is the fourth year, and one of my last years at Bruno Boys, and so this is the fourth year. But the last two seasons I got better at it, but it's some work that you have to put into it to really kind of understand values, and not overpaying like for quarterbacks necessarily. I mean, you can look at matchups, and there's so many really great sites and people out there that have a focus on daily fantasy. So there's a lot of resources for you to kind of brush up on it. But it's fun. There are a lot of contests, and you can kind of dip your toe in sort of beginner type contests, and then also try different strategies. There are many different elements of daily games, just like there are different types of season-long fantasy leagues.
Excellent. I'm definitely going. I'm nervous. I'm trepidatious about it.
You should do it, Sharon. I finally, I resisted for a long time, and then I finally, I think it was either week 14 or 15 last year, right before the end, I was like, fine, screw it, I'm doing it. And then, of course, I loved it, and then it was over. And I've actually been playing golf the football off season. I've been doing DFS golf, which is kind of fun too. It's similar to football, and it's just you set your lineup on a Thursday and then you go through the weekend, as opposed to like NBA and NHL, which is every night, which I don't have time for that. But you should definitely try it this year.
NBA. Yeah, I was going to do an NBA. This is why I have it. I know I'm going to suck, at least at first, and I don't like to suck.
No, I know. It's tough. It really is. It's hard. It's humbling to all of a sudden be like, wait a minute, I'm not good at this. But with football, you'll be fine. You just have to, like Allie said, it's a different mentality to just setting your lineups. It's not the same as a weekly, or as a seasonal, I mean. So you have to kind of, like she said, I would do some research and look at things. But like I said, I resisted for years, and then last year I finally pulled the trigger, and it was like the end of the season. I was like, wow, this is really fun. And then, of course, it was over.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to do it. I want to wrap up real quick with just I've kept you ladies long enough, but I want to ask, what is standard now when we are talking about fantasy football? I want to move away from leagues that carry a place kicker, that do a team defense, to more leagues that have IDP players. It's just more fun to me.
Well, I've played in IDP leagues. This is I think maybe my 5th year playing. I think this will be my 5th year playing in IDP. And I mean, I agree with you. I think it's more challenging. I don't want every league I play to be like a full-on IDP. I mean, I was in a league where 36-round draft, slow draft, but that's a lot to manage, and you're starting 20 or 22 players a week. But it certainly gives out the balance. And I do agree. I think in many leagues you're kind of seeing a movement away from the team defense or eliminating the place kicker and maybe adding another
like a flex
player. Right.
Or a second quarterback.
Correct. The super flex leagues or 2 QB leagues or something like that. So if you're going to play and you want to kind of expand your game, it's interesting. It is a commitment. I mean, there are some great follows for IDP. And I'm always looking for the value because some folks are going to go for like a J.J. Watt early on, or maybe there aren't too many great, let's say, defensive tackles. I'm talking about from a fantasy perspective because IDP, as you know, you have a different.
Yeah, it's all about
some of the best. Right, and some of the really good players at certain positions aren't really great fantasy options because, let's say, they're not going to throw to them, so or in their vicinity. Let's say if you're talking about a quarterback, a cornerback, or something. So you have to kind of understand that. But again, I think in some leagues people are picking up maybe 2 or 3 IDP players in lieu of the whole roster. So it is fun and interesting and challenging, especially if you've played for a while and you kind of want to up your game a little bit and branch out.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. I agree. I probably won't go entirely with IDPs, but I might just maybe do one standard league this season. I don't know. I haven't decided, but it's an interesting discussion, interesting thought process. And now, you guys, I've got to do DFS. I've got to give it a try and see how it is. So I appreciate the information and the encouragement there.
Yeah, definitely give it a shot. I mean, I think once you try it, you'll like it, and it's like another level of the fantasy addiction if you suffer from that affliction. So.
I do. I mean, like every year I'm like, I'm not going to take on too much, and I end up in 10 fantasy leagues. It's like this is the way it turns out. All right. Thank you both for joining me this morning. Allie, I'll let you go first. Tell everybody out there where they can find you writing and on social media.
Okay, well, my writing plans for 2015 are still coming together. I'll probably write again for the Fantasy Fix as I've done in the past, but you can find me on Twitter at Allie Fontana.
Thanks again for joining me, Allie. And Jen, tell everybody where they can find you.
I like Allie. I'm kind of in the process of figuring out what I'm doing writing-wise for the season, but I'm always on XN Sports, and I am on Twitter at the Monday Mommy.
We're trying to recruit her to Pro Player Insiders.
No, I am. By the way, Sharona, yeah, I'm actually training tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I have a little training session tomorrow with Patricia. Sidebar, but yes, awesome. I'm doing that tomorrow. So I will be awesome. I will be contributing to that as well this season.
I'm so excited to hear that. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to Sharona Unfiltered. I'm Sharona. You can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. You can catch me. We're going to be doing a Monday show as well as a Wednesday show next week. Catch me Friday on Game Over with Vasti and Sharona. You can find me at NFL Female and at Pro Player Insiders. We'll be back. Thanks for tuning in, and have a very pleasant day.
Montag lieben Glauben Globen.
All right.